go, guys, all right? We'll see you later. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. And I will ask for forgiveness now before I That is my father-in-law. For now. Thank you. Let's pray. God, for the joy of life and family and laughter, and for the time with the young people, for the time to just rest from the world, we give you thanks. God, we ask you now that you just bless this time. Let us hear what you would have us hear, from the gospel reading to the stories that I'm about to share. God, blow your spirit in this place. Amen. So today we are starting a new sermon series called Lean on Me, Life Transitions. Your worship team and I remember that there's a bunch of us in the life of our church here who are going through life changes. Starting a new year at school. Some of us are retiring. I think I counted like 5 people retired in the last year. Or starting a new job. And there are changes at home in our family lives, from kids moving back in to parents moving in, you name it. We are maturing in faith and age. We're all getting a little older. As we make our way forward in life, we thought as a worship team that we needed some help. And I think we can all agree, let me say this, we don't do this life alone very well. We need to learn to lean on the one constant in our lives during all of those changes, because we need some guidance, some encouragement, we need some direction. And that one constant in our lives is Jesus. And as we thought about the phrase, lean on me, well, you know the song, right? Choir singing it in 2 weeks, right? Yeah, a special version of it. The song, Bill Withers' author, Lean on Me, is based on his experiences growing up in a West Virginia coal mining town. And during the lean times, he writes, neighbors would help each other out. The simple chord progression was created while he noodled around on his just-purchased Wurlitzer electronic keyboard. He wasn't a pianist, and he had no knowledge of the keyboard. He just knew that he liked the sound it made when his fingers went a certain way. And the sound of the chords reminded Withers of the church hymns he heard growing up, similar to what we're going to do next in 2 weeks. And the song was written before Withers was a recording star, having to come up with some material for a new album. And it was written on the basis that the singer wanted to express the concept from Scripture, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It was a sentiment he had grown up with. And remembering those types of lessons, those values from our childhood days, those are important things to us as we grow up. These are values taught to us by our family, our friends, and our faith. So therefore, I hope we can draw the simple conclusion this morning. We do need others. We rely on others to get through life. And this morning, we start our series around this concept of growing up by looking at the one who grew up, Jesus. Throughout the month, we're going to look at people throughout all of Scripture who we might lean on to go through these life experiences with. It's my prayer this month that we connect with the stories, connect our stories with the stories from Scripture, so that we can learn from them and lean on God for those experiences. As I said, today we begin with Jesus and his growing up. So I had to look up some stories about growing up. You can all imagine. And also stories about getting older, because in my brain, growing up is a nice way of saying we're getting older, right? The story, this first one, is told about company were hiring teamsters to drive its stagecoaches through the mountains. And the local office manager advertised for the position. People began applying for the job, and they were interviewed, and the boss asked each applicant, "How close can you drive to the edge of the cliff as you run the mountain?" The first fellow replied he was skilled enough. He could drive the stagecoach within 3 feet of the edge of the cliff. The boss thanked him for his time and called in the next applicant. In the course of the interview, the boss asked the next man the same question. He replied that he could drive the team and coach within 1 foot of the edge of the cliff. And he was likewise thanked for his time, and the next applicant was called in. And the boss asked this fellow the same question. "I would drive the coach as far from the edge of the cliff as I possibly could." He got the job. There is great wisdom, this last line. There is great wisdom in steering our kids as far from the edge of the world as possible. This next story. Somebody said a child is carried in a mother's womb for 9 months. Somebody does not know that a child is carried in its mother's heart forever. Somebody said it takes 6 weeks to get back to normal after you've had a baby. Somebody doesn't know that once you're a mother, normal is history. Somebody said you learn how to be a mother by instinct. Somebody never took a 3-year-old shopping. Somebody said being a mother is boring. Somebody never rode in a car driven by a teenager with a learner's permit. Somebody said good mothers never raise their voices. Somebody never came out the back door just in time to see her child hit a golf ball through the neighbor's kitchen window. Somebody said you don't need an education to be a mother. Somebody never helped a 4th grader with math. Somebody said you can't love the 5th child as much as you love the 1st. Somebody doesn't have 5 children. Somebody said a mother can find all the answers to her child-rearing questions in books. Somebody never had a child stuff beans up her nose. Somebody said a mother can stop worrying after her child gets married. Somebody doesn't know that marriage adds a new son or daughter-in-law to the mother's heartstrings. Somebody said a mother's job is done when her last child leaves home. Somebody never had grandchildren. Somebody said your mother knows you love her, so you don't need to tell her. Somebody isn't a mother. I got one more for you. From the other end of the age spectrum. I am a seen-ager, a senior teenager. I have everything I wanted as a teenager, only 50 years later. I don't have to go to school or work. Your retirees should love that one. I get an allowance every month. I have my own pad. I don't have a curfew. I have a driver's license and my own car, and I don't have acne. These stories kind of give us that common mindset of growing up. And I'm not a parent, but let me say I find it hard to believe that some of the young people in my life are growing up. I find it hard to believe my parents and my grandma are as old as they are. My grandma especially, these last 10 years have been really rough on her. It's tough even to look back at the youth in my first church. Little Abby, last I remember Abby was about this big. She's now about this big, but she's 24 years old. My youth are now married, and in the early years of their career, they're having children. But it's also tough to look back on all the adults that I've grown and loved over the years. We all grow up. Normal growing up, it involves aging, wisdom, life experiences. It involves changing and developing new habits, getting rid of the bad ones, and growing into our fullness as God's creation. On this back-to-school weekend, we witnessed the young people in our lives growing up. Some are heading off to school the first time alone. I think of our Amanda Howell, just went to college. Some are getting ready for their last set of firsts. Some are starting new schools, new grades, meeting new people. We have to face it, they're growing up. And as much as growing up causes us angst and anxiousness, it's a vital part of our lives. It was even for Jesus. Look at the story from Luke. Nazareth, 60 miles north of Jerusalem in Galilee, and pious Jews who lived in Galilee traveled to Jerusalem regularly for the festivals, the holy days. Their version of Taste of Madison, right? And in this story, Jesus' parents are doing exactly what they would do. Well, in Wisconsin, we go visit the beer tent, right? Right. Jesus' parents would go and do exactly what they were expected of them. And even though they had a tween, a young person who wasn't quite a teenager yet, that they had to keep entertained, I'm sure they didn't have a phone, right? The story of Jesus as a young boy is the only account that we have in Scripture between his infancy and his childhood, or his adulthood. And I have to wonder, someone has to wonder if Luke gave us the story to remind us of the humanity of Christ. With this story, he implies that Jesus, God in the flesh, had a normal childhood. A normal childhood brings all that growing up does with it. Jesus stayed behind after his parents left to the temple, and I can only imagine the stress and anxiety they felt. But once they arrived, found him teaching the elders, the words came out, "What are you doing to